Hi, this is Toby Crines and Kurt Van Anen in the yet to be named podcast here. It's for agencies by agencies, and we're going to talk through some of the experiences and stories that we've gone through. Kurt, how long have you been at it?
I got my WordPress username in 2004.
That's awesome.
So yeah, and looking at your background, it seems fairly similar. You know, we both come from that same era. And I was in the automotive business, built websites as a hobbyist. When you work in automotive, you work 13, 14-hour days. Your head is still wired when you get off of a shift. And I kind of use this internet thing as like a distraction, like maybe to go to sleep at night or something, like a hobby. And I started playing with HTML stuff and Macromedia before it was Adobe.
Oh, yeah.
And was playing with all that stuff, 2003, 4. And then I found WordPress.
Mm-hmm.
And by 2007, I was making websites for other people. By 2008, Mañana No Mas was born. And I went to work corporately for a while as a learning and management developer. But yeah, I'm right back at it, back at the agency game since 2020.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. Did you do Flash back in the day?
Oh, dude, Flash was the bomb giggity, man.
I know, man.
The website would open up and things would move around and music would play. And you know, people that worked in a cubicle used to hate Flash websites because you'd play them automatically. And I thought it was the coolest thing ever. But apparently, people that run the internet thought that had to go away.
Yeah, I know, man. I used to run the Flash user group, and it was the greatest software ever invented. And here we are, WordPress, the second greatest software ever invented.
This is the greatest software ever invented.
So we're going to talk on this podcast about our stories with agencies. You've been at doing Mañana No Mas for a long, long time. I've been doing Mighty Mo for a long time. I'm just going to throw out a question here to kick things off, and we'll see where it goes. This is like about client retention, but not in the usual way, because I've been wondering, like, how do you keep clients engaged for the next project, even when you're not doing much for them, or even maybe you're doing maintenance, but maintenance is so like, here's a PDF auto-generated, maybe I did a little work, and so how do you line up that next contract with the client?
You're going to hate me because I'm going to take it in a completely opposite direction.
Go for it.
And so this was something I started doing as Mañana No Mas, as a startup working out of Albuquerque, New Mexico, in the Economic Development Center's offices. I had a ton of unengaged, unplugged-in clients. I just had, because every time a new business started in Albuquerque, they would send them to me to get a website made. And these businesses either made it or they didn't. And so I ended up with like all this half-done or recently done but never executed, project work. And I made up my mind. I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make a list of all my clients. I'm going to take the bottom third for revenue and activity, and I'm just going to fire them. And I literally just sent out really nice emails that said, hey, Mañana No Mas is in an expansion mode. We're bringing on new clients. Unfortunately, we won't be able to service your account any longer. Here's a list of 5 people locally that we would recommend that you could go to maybe get your work performed or maintained. And people said I was crazy. People said I was stupid. My wife had a heart attack with that idea. She was like, oh my God, you're going to, a third of the business you're just going to throw away. That year, my business doubled. Like the revenue doubled. And the margins went through the roof. I mean, my margins weren't great back then. But at the time, I thought, oh my God, I can't believe I'm making this kind of money doing this kind of work. And so I did it every year. Every year I fired 30% of my clients. And every year I experienced some kind of growth because I brought on better quality clients.
Mm-hmm. Now, your wife said 30%, but it sounds like it was 30% of clients. Very different from 30% of the business.
Yeah, definitely. And I'd say as we continued to grow, the scope of our projects obviously continued to grow, right? So now we do a lot of membership, e-commerce, e-learning centered websites. And so now we have people that are kind of in it for the long haul. But what that means is that the clients that came with us for like a brochure website, we might do the hosting and the maintenance for them, for their $79 a month or whatever that is. And then if we don't do any other work for them, then that's kind of it. Out of sight, out of mind. We just, we have our team manage the hosting account and that's it. Do I still fire clients like that? Not as aggressively as I used to, but it got me where I'm at.
Yeah. How many people are on your team?
We use people all over the globe. And so I like to say we're about 10 people strong. And then, of course, you read about, web dev studios and 10 Up and these really big agencies. And you're like, oh, wouldn't that be awesome? And then there's another part of me that says, I'm 57 years old. I don't want those headaches.
Right.
Yeah. The part that I struggle with, see, I'm going to go off on another tangent. Toby, this isn't good. You shouldn't be asking me questions that I can just, my ADD kicks in. But I want to use freelancers in the States. I want to use people where English is their first language. I want to use people that I know I could add value to as a fellow American, right? Like I want to be that patriot. But I can't tell you how many times I've gone to post status or I've gone within my own circles and I've said, hey, I've got this small project. I need some customization done for this WooCommerce store, or I need this custom page laid out with custom CSS. And it's stuff that, could I figure it out? I probably could, but it'd be smarter for me to have someone else do it. And I get these things back like, oh, wow, one page custom CSS, you're looking at about $3,200. And I go, and then I got a guy in Vietnam that's like, sure thing, Mr. Van Anen, have that done for you tomorrow. It'll be $80.
Right.
And it's like, oh, please help me make this make sense.
Yeah.
And that's like, in some cases, I'm not even charging $3,200 for the whole project,
right,
let alone that one page.
Yeah. I actually think like, with all the tariff talk recently, like if I were president, I would tariff overseas labor immediately. That would be my first tariff order. That would immediately bring all the work back. Like right now, like so much work's going abroad, and, I would I would love to hire locally. I would like to hire everybody in Minneapolis. And I know some people, even affordable people, but they're nowhere near as affordable as other countries.
And I do crazy things. I'm sure in a business only, spreadsheets discussion, there's organizations called 20 clubs in the automotive and motorcycle space where, groups of business owners get together and beat each other up about their spreadsheets and their margins and their numbers and stuff. And so if we did the same thing in the WordPress world, could you imagine getting together with 10 other agency owners and being like, how many websites did you make? How many clients is that spread over? How many pages was each website? And you really drove down through like key performance indicators of each project and then said, what's your labor rate, right? So what is your agency rate? And then there's a really cool term in the service world for automotive and power sports called the effective labor rate. Effective labor rate is how much money did you really collect per hour, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe you build the job out at $10,000 and you thought it was going to take 200 hours to do it, but it really ended up taking 600 hours to do it. Well, you take the 10 grand, divide by 600, that's your effective labor rate. And so if we really had like 20 club organizations of WordPress agencies and really drove our KPIs in that way, I think it would be really, really shocking to see what people are working for.
Yeah, that's true. I also think like the other side of the market is without any like governmental controls. Like if all of us had full-time or just U.S. workers, our prices would have to go up. And so would our customers even want to hire us anymore if we were like priced up there, whatever there is,
Well, but see, that's that whole other conversation, right? And that's why is it that President Obama came out with the Affordable Care Act, and then they hired his wife's college roommate to make the website for that project and paid her $93 million. Like, in what planet is a medical directory website worth $93 million?
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I've stumbled into a package or a deal or a contract, and it's been a referral, and it just comes to me like, oh yeah, we've already pre-bid this at $52,000. And I'm thinking to myself, oh crud, I probably would have bid that at 26 grand. Now in the end, for some reason, it always ends up working out that was probably the right dollar amount. But I've got other projects I've done for $8,000, $5,000, $4,000. And you know what? Somehow, Toby, it always seems to work out.
Yeah. Well, I think that's that's how you last 18 years in the business, or in your like you've been around what 15 years, something like that. 18, I don't know, but whatever. It's like yeah, you have to figure it out. Like as we talk about like content for people who are listening who might be agency owners or freelancers looking to like scale up. That's the game. Like, did you make it or did you not make it to next year?
It sounds so trite. Maybe it's the believer in me. Maybe it's too much time at church, but I have successfully navigated every obstacle and temptation that's come my way in life so far, and then that's just the way it is with business too. There's so many times where I'm like, man, I should just go get a job. And then I got to tell you, over like the last 3 years, Toby, I have become emotionally unemployable. I live in Hutchinson, Kansas, and there is a job in Hutchinson, Kansas right now that multiple people have tagged me on Facebook. Like, you need to apply for this. You would be amazing at this job. This city would be crazy to not hire you for this job. And then I think about it, I go, I should probably apply for that job. And then I think about it and I go, answer to a board of directors.
Right. Yep.
Hours in the office, events after hours, away from family, right? And travel to other cities for events, representing something that's not my own, right? And then I'm just like, man, forget it. Like, I'm not signing up for that. I'll volunteer and I'll help whoever takes that job, whoever gets that job, I will volunteer and I will help them with projects and events, but I'm not going to take that job.
It's a weird thing. I was collaborating. I was brought on with a startup, and so I've owned my small business forever. Like for 18 years now. But let's say year 13, they came in and they needed a CTO basically, and they ended up having like legitimate hockey. It was just like this weird scenario, hockey stick growth, where like they ended up selling for 200 something million like a year after I left the company or something. But what I learned, like the reason I left is because I was no longer a fit. Like I was fine when it was me, 3 owners, 1 or 2 other teammates. But as soon as we started growing, I just got so tired and anxious, like probably tired because of the anxiety of like this infrastructure that I helped build. But just like, I don't even like this work,
Wow, I was really good at building something I hate.
Right. And it's funny when I ended up getting fired from that job because I was kind of like a cantankerous little jerk at one point, and I was on the phone on a Google Meet with the owner and another owner, the main owner and the secondary owner, and they're like, well, how do you want to handle this? And I was like, I told them, like, just do me the dignity of firing me using the process that I built. It's like, okay.
At least fire me with my own tools.
Right. So they did. It was great.
Corporately speaking, so I love power sports. I've been in the motorcycle industry forever. I raced motorcycles for 20 years. I just love bikes. And I ended up getting the job of a lifetime, and I got hired away from my agency in Albuquerque by Ducati North America. And they put me in charge of their whole training program. And before I knew it, I was traveling the world and doing things that I never thought I'd get to do. Like, it was just an amazing opportunity. But what people don't recognize is, even though almost everybody recognizes the name Ducati, that office was run with like 30 people. Mm-hmm. And so I was in charge of the entire training division. Yeah, someone else was in charge of the entire customer service division. Someone else was in charge of, accessories. And it was a really cool place to work, because the director level management was kind of like, well, it's your division. You have a corporate credit card. If you need to go buy something to keep your division running, you go do that. Like there was certain things that you could just do. I left that job and I went to Suzuki. Uh-huh. Suzuki is, when I started there, I think they had like a couple hundred people in the office. Uh-huh. They had an accounting division. They had a marketing cluster. They had I was in charge of training, and I had 5 people that worked underneath me. Toby, I'm going to tell you, the amount of meetings that they scheduled, and I watched my vice president just walk back and forth through the cubicles to a meeting room. Then he'd come back out. Then he'd go back in. Then he'd come back out. And I asked him one day, we went to lunch, and I said, Steve, At what point do you actually get to take action or do any of the work that you discuss in these meetings? Like, I never see you get to do it. How do you stay awake all day? You know? But it was, what you described was, it became so ineffectual. It became just this giant boat anchor of process rather than anything that you kind of enjoyed.
Yeah. I think of like dream jobs, because you mentioned that. That's an interesting thing. I have two jobs that stand out as dream jobs. One was sports writer for the Northwest Herald. Loved it. Did it for 6 months, and then I moved, and that was the end of my career. The other one was front desk manager at the University of Minnesota's full-time MBA program. Did that for a couple of years. Loved it. I was the lowest level employee, but it was one of the greatest times of my life.
My dream job, the job I enjoyed the most, and people will say I'm crazy, was when I was young, I worked the outbound at one of the UPS hubs loading trucks. Mm-hmm. And it was real life Tetris to me, and I really got good at it. I held the load record in the Willow Grove hub for years, as far as I know.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was like, and the, you know, they always try and trick you and throw like a box in that has the wrong zip code on it, you know, wing it back out the back door, you know, and they're like, we can never get them, you know. It's like, I'm good at this job. And it's like, when you're really good at something and it's physical and it's almost like a mental break to do it, it was like, it was just like this awesome job. And I trained other people. I volunteered on the training staff. That's probably my first experience with corporate training. Mm-hmm. I just love that job. Yeah. And now I'm old, right? I'm 57, and I look at younger people and I'll say things like, you should get a job loading trucks at UPS. And they look at me like I've got 6 heads. Who would do that?
A real misunderstanding. Like, I don't think I would have called it my dream job when maybe I would have, I don't know. But it's funny how many people our age, and I think part of it is like we look back at these simpler times as like the better jobs in a way. But part of it, I was thinking back when I was doing those jobs, I had no external forces on my time. Like, it was just like, how am I going to use my time today? And I devoted all my energies to like running the full-time MBA front desk. I went to all the events and knew everybody, and I stayed late and showed up early, did weekends. And as you get older, like, people are like, what's your work-life balance? But I think like what that question fails to capture is you don't need a work-life balance when you have no external pressures and you're young and you're physically fit and, you know, like,
just go. I'm curious, what was your first venture into like entrepreneurism? What was the very first inkling, not your first job or your first company, but what was the first time that you thought, I could leverage the efforts of others for my personal gain?
Okay. So I was afraid to be entrepreneurial. But my dad delivered Little Debbie's. That was his job. He had a Little Debbie truck, and the way Little Debbie works is you buy a route, and Little Debbie does not make a lot of money. I think his salary the one year was like $25,000, you know, so like, and we had a family of 9, you know, so like, but he had the truck, and with Little Debbie, now this is different for Hostess and bread companies and a lot of other companies where the company will buy back your stale product. Their idea is like, push more product, push more. With Little Debbie, you're responsible. You buy what you think you can sell, and then you keep the rest. So we had a garage full of Little Debbies. I used to bring them to school in high school and sell them like for, I don't know, a quarter a box or 50 cents a box. And my dad's like, whatever, they're just going to get eaten by raccoons in our garage. So I'd say that was it. Selling Little Debbies for a quarter a pop or a box or whatever. I remember there's one guy who loved honey buns, and every now and then I would get like a box of the gas station honey buns, which are larger than like you'd get in the regular box of 10 or whatever. How about you? What was your...
those big honey buns. Mine was, I lived in Philadelphia in the suburbs, and I had a paper route, and it was the 7th grade. And it was the old school bicycle, canvas sack bicycle, you know, newspaper route. And one day a kid didn't show up to do his route, and the it's going to sound mean, but the adult in charge of the newspaper center, he was not all there. He was a special needs person for sure. And he was like, you know, hey, the kid didn't show up to do his route. And I said, just give me the route and I'll take it. And he was like, oh, but you already have a route. I said, don't worry about it. Just give me the route. I'll take care of it. And so I delivered all those papers, right? And so the next day, same thing. So a week goes by. I got 2 routes. Another kid quits. I pick up a 3rd route. I pick up a 4th route. I pick up a 5th route. This poor dude is like, I have no idea how the 7th graders delivering these papers, but they're all getting delivered, you know? Uh-huh. And so what he didn't realize was I had hired a bunch of 5th and 6th graders to go and deliver the papers. And all I did was go around and knock on the door and collect, right? So give me the money, give me the money, give me the money. And then I would pay the kids out, right? Mm-hmm. And then I'd go buy myself a couple Mountain Dews at the beverage store. And then I just gave whatever was left to this dude, the newspaper general manager guy. And a couple of times I was short, you know, and he said, hey, you're short. And I said, well, that's what happens when you hire kids.
What'd you expect? Go find some more kids.
What'd you expect? You know, all I know is I got my Mountain Dew, bro. And it was such a surreal experience. Because when because he goes, how are you delivering all these papers? And I was like, I got all these kids delivering papers for me. He was like, you can't do that. But then I was like, you know what? I think I was meant to be a businessman.
Yeah. Yeah, that was what I had when I got fired from that job that I told you about. They go, I think you're just a business owner, Toby. I was like, yeah, that seems about right.
Yeah, you're too independent and free thinking for the rest of us.
Right. So if we can just turn that last thought around, like the idea of like some employees are going to be better than others. Now, this person was like, he's doing the job. I'm going to ask no questions. How do you tell me about an experience where you had an employee, maybe it was a part-time contractor, maybe it was a job, and you realized they weren't getting it done. And then you had to figure out a way to get it done. And maybe you found another person and, you know.
That is always difficult. So during COVID, someone that I had added to my staff, if you want to call it that, you know, and we're all contractors, right? We're all kind of moving and grooving. But she had really embraced this idea of multiple paychecks. So she had a full-time gig working for another company and was remote. And then she would say, oh yeah, I can do that for you, Kurt. That's not a problem. And then I found out she had another company she was full-time remote for. And then she had a third company she was picking up contracts for. Now, kudos to her, because she had figured out how to live in California and make $400,000 a year. The problem was I was getting really sub-quality work. And Mañana No Mas isn't known for sub-quality work. My whole agency is built on the idea of on budget and ahead of deadline. But you still have to meet a quality standpoint, right? Mm-hmm. So, you know, that's that always thing. Do you want it good? Do you want it fast? Or do you want it cheap, right? But it's at no point am I telling people I'm going to give you crap, but get it done on time. Mm-hmm. And I was getting some bad stuff. And it just had to be a real conversation.
Yeah.
You know, and I have a John Maxwell certification in leadership and speaking, and I've read his whole stinking library, and as well as a couple of other authors. And I think if you're going to be in business, you have to come up with some word salads, even if it comes from other authors, on how to approach these difficult topics, you know. And I found that being direct is the best way, you know. Like, hey, I was looking at what you sent over, just a couple of things. I mean, it's not meeting our quality standards. So I don't know if you didn't spend enough time on it, or if you have other contracts that you are distracted by, but if you're not able to meet our quality standard, I'm going to have to move on. Mm-hmm. And that was it. And she's a great lady. I really like her. She's a fun person. I just, I couldn't keep up with her thirst for earning.
It's weird because I had an employee that was doing that too, something like that. I'm pretty sure I was a second or third job, and it's a strategy. It's a whole strategy where you basically say, I'm going to deliver crap and I'll get fired when I get fired. As it happens, I knew a guy when I was 19, he was 17. He was like a high school friend. And he lied and got a job at a medical laboratory doing something that required a PhD. And so he was making huge dollars. He's just graduated high school. And I mean, I don't know, thousands a week, whereas like I was making $8 an hour at, whatever, and I had a good paying job. But I remember it took them weeks before they figured it out. And meanwhile, he's just like throwing money around, like, look how rich I am, or maybe it had to be month, like at least 2 weeks, because he got at least one paycheck and bought like a fancy camera. Then he got fired. I think like it's easy to pull one over on people because we have to trust them,
You want to think that the good's always going to win, or you want to, we want to believe these stories. But the truth of the matter is, having climbed the corporate ladder like I had, I witnessed a lot of people in control or in charge of a lot of things that they had no business to be in control or in charge of. To the point where, if you're working for a motorcycle company or an automotive company or something, and you're like, hey, as far as I knew, that vehicle didn't pass emissions, but we're still selling it in the United States. Like, how does that happen, right? Or, hey, where did that car go? Remember that car that got dropped off by the manufacturer and we were supposed to look at? Where did that car go? Right? It's just gone. It's like, I can't tell you how many things have just disappeared, under someone else's watch. And you're sitting there like, how does this continue to happen? How is this permitted? But then we all sit back now in our political landscape and we see Doge at work and finding, billions and trillions of dollars misspent. And it's like, well, those are people that got to the top of the food chain and just made super poor decisions and got away with it.
My buddy was at a 3M, huge corporation, one of the world's 5 biggest, maybe. He's at a meeting. He's telling me he's in marketing. He has 8 people on a call, and not a single one was accepting any responsibility for the project that they were all collaborating on. He's like, it'd be like, so who's going to do this? And just silence. Next, just move on. Next topic. Who's going to do this? Nothing.
Yeah. Who's in charge? Nobody.
I think like,
I was going to bring this up and you kind of led to this. Was there a moment where you realized the money, the dollar amount didn't matter? Like we say it matters, but did you were you ever on a call or something where you were like, holy crud, that's a lot of money. And then you're like, all of a sudden you were like, oh, I guess money doesn't really have a value. It's all perception.
Sure. I did a project once, and the person doing the paying, like, not the payer, but it was an agency in town, a bigger agency in town, and they hired me and they said, Toby, we'll pay you any amount you want, like per hour, and you can work as many hours as you want. I was like, what? Like, they're like, it doesn't bother, because they were just funneling it through to the next person. Like, they were paying all the bills. They were just scraping some off the top, and it blew my mind. Yeah. I mean,
and inside you were all being legit, like, well, our agency rate is $123 an hour, and
totally,
that should take about 10 hours.
Yeah,
No, I was on. I used to have a business doing stuff in power sports, and I wanted to go to an event, but I needed to be fronted about $30,000 in merchandise to go represent this company at this event, and it was the Petronas Oil Company. So I asked my people, and my people said, oh, we're going to be on a call with Petronas next week. Just jump on the call and ask them. I'm sure it'll be fine. And I was like, that's weird. Like, I'm just Kurt. And I get invited to this call, and my learning experience in this call changed the entire way that I did business from then on. Like, there's a reason why I wrote a course on how to sell work in the service industry, because money doesn't matter. I'm on the call. Carl Fogarty, who's a world famous road racer, ran the team. They said, oh, Carl's got a question. And he says, and he's British, so he's got an accent. I won't ruin the show by doing it. And says, hey, I just need another $50 million for more research and development.
Right.
And they went, no problem, Carl. Just fill out the form, fax it on over. We assume it's going to be the same account, right? And he was like, righty-o. And I was like, boom. And they said, okay, well, it's been a great call. And then my guy, Neil, says, oh, no, there's one more person on the call. I'm asking for 30 grand. I'm scared to death. I am
Right.
scared to death to ask for $30,000, and someone just got $50 million on the call. And so I was like, I want to go to Laguna Seca. I wanted to represent the company, but I'm gonna need about $30,000 in merchandise to put on display there. And they almost laughed at me. They were like, dude, just send over a tick list of what you need. We'll take care of the shipping. It'll be there waiting for you. I was trying to think, well, how am I going to get from Albuquerque to California and carry all this crud?
Yeah.
And they were like, oh no, we'll just have we'll have logistics drop it for you, everything. And of course we sold everything out that weekend. So there was no debt to carry. It was all profit. But that phone call changed the way I handled every financial conversation after that. Because now I just add up the numbers, and the number's the number. It doesn't matter what the number is. Now the customer can say yes or no.
Right. When I worked with you, the boss of my department, amazing person, I think I asked her once, I'm like, we were having a conversation about budgets, and she was saying, like, what's to stop me from spending way over my budget? Nothing. Like, what? So, like, some accountant a year from now is like, you went over budget? Then what? Is the university not going to pay the bill? Like, they'll figure it out. Like, that was her attitude. She was awesome.
Yeah, they'll figure it out.
Yeah, like, they'll get money from somewhere.
Yep. Because someone's over budget, and they'll scrape it from somewhere else.
Yeah. And you're right. Like, money... that's what my dad always told me, like, never feel bad about taking someone's spending money, like, for a legitimate purpose. Like, like
for Little Debbie's.
Yeah, Little Debbie's. And I used to like play in a band, and I was selling my tape. And she's like, should I sell it for $5 or $2? He's like, just get the 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ask for 9. See if you get 5.
See what happens.
That's good stuff. I can remember, and now this is going to be like kind of a crossover from a different show that happened last week. I don't know if you saw it or not, but Kevin Geary and Robert DeVore had a big, I'm not going to say argument, but they had a disagreement about the value of a website. And I thought that whole conversation was extremely interesting because I used to be the agency in Albuquerque that made $500 websites and had a list of deadbeat clients that couldn't pay their bills or, couldn't afford hosting at the end of the month or whatever. And now we're the agency that bids on enterprise level work and gets paid before we do the work. And the number is the number, and we're not bashful or shy about sharing the number. And I was very intrigued by that whole conversation. What does it look like on your end? Where you
I've gone up and down over the years, like in terms of how I round the rosy with how to do that. I've kind of come to the conclusion, like for me, what I need is the guaranteed money. So how I solved that problem was not to like scale up or level up, but to just demand the money upfront before any work is done. And so there are 2 clients that I have right now that are always late. One of them is naturally going away. Like, it's just not working out naturally. I didn't have to fire them. I've like sent them some nice emails, and they're leaving. Another one, I don't know what's going to happen. They're really nice. They're late all the time. I'm like bending over backwards, like for payment plans, but it's just one. And like part of it for me is like, I think they're paying $50 a month. And it's like, is it worth this headache for $50 a month, one time a month? Yeah, right now it is. I'm not, I can stomach it. At some point it probably becomes untenable. Like, we had one guy that was with us for a long time, like years, and he was paying $30 a month. He always paid on time, but the deal we made with him years ago was like one small thing for $30 a month. And I tried to get him up to like, how about 1 hour a month? Because like, that just makes more sense to us.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to do that. So it's like, all right, we can't do it anymore. Like, it was just too much headache because it was like a totally different, like, because my team would always be emailing me, what's one small thing? Is this a small thing?
It's a small thing.
Be like, I don't know. So I will still do the small stuff. In fact, what I've been doing recently, I sold 2 of these in the last month, and I didn't do it prior to last month, so I don't know. I've actually sold, over the years, I've done a ton of these, but it's the idea, like, what if we get together, you and I, business, you buyer, me, website guy, and we build you a website. How long will that take? And so what I've decided is it's 5 sessions, 90 minutes each session. I'm calling it a workshop. And at the end of these 5, you'll have a website. And I've priced it in a way that makes sense for me. And it's weird because, like, I feel like it's really, like, so I have this other team working on all these other random projects that come in. And I haven't quite figured out how this fits or if it fits. Like, is it a waste of my time? Is it just paying their bill and, like, creating this fake money flow that, like, could I just make more money by firing the other people? And, I don't think that's true, by the way. I think the other people are profitable in their own, that business of the company. But at the end of the day, though, I'm looking at it I'm like, if I could sell a lot of these, this would be really interesting too. A lot of these, like, if I could do 2 or 3 of these a day, it'd be awesome.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. We went to kind of a productized, templated offer for startups. We are consciously avoiding the like $5,000 to $15,000 sites right now. And then we have a different vertical that is all like 20K plus projects, but they're e-learning. I mean, they're involved projects, right? We just bid on a job that was like $240,000, but we're going to help create the learning material. We're going to, we're doing curriculum development. So it's a big thing. The productized offer was only because I moved to Hutchinson, Kansas. And it's like, man, there's a lot of food trucks in town. None of them have a working website. There's a lot of coffee shops in town. None of them have a working website. And by working, I mean anything better than a digital business card.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them, like, you would just be, critical error screens or all kinds of stuff. And I thought, you know what? Let's make a sample website for a food truck, a sample website for a consultant, a sample website for a construction company that does remodeling. What are the tools that each of those would want, like make appointments or charge for this or have a menu or whatever. And then we, through our hosting, have a thing called blueprinting, which is like it's like a multi-tenancy idea where you just clone that instance. They name it, they put their URL on it, they can change whatever they want to change. It's an independent site, it's not a multi-site, and it's theirs. And so we offer those as a super affordable startup package, and then $79 a month for hosting and maintenance. Because we update all the plugins, and because they want to run their food truck. They don't want to know how WordPress works.
How much of that is standardized, like for the plugin and theme mix across? Let's say you have 10 food truck sites. Do they use the exact same plugins and themes, or are they variety of?
My goal is to put them all on the same thing, right? Because let's face facts. Like the sample is mostly like yellow and orange, right? So it looks like an Oscar Mayer site, I guess. But someone else comes in. Okay, we're going to change that primary color to blue, the secondary color to red, the primary color to gray, the secondary color to yellow. And then the site looks completely different. And then you throw in tacos on one and hot dogs on another. They're completely different websites. But so all the client has to do is change the images and the text. And then we give them training. Like, I forgot to mention that, but we give them training on here's how you update the shopping cart. Here's how you add your Stripe contact information. I saw Matt's thing. He did a video on making a brew house, a tap house website using Gravity Form and Gravity Square add-on. And I was like, man, that was clean. That was clean.
So it made you think.
Yeah, so I might steal that example and do a different project with that. But I like having these different projects where they're kind of templatized, and then they go, oh, well, I'm a consultant. Great. Here's a consultant website. It makes appointments. It charges people for things. It has a CRM built into it. It does this. It does this. It does this. It's $1,500 and it's yours, and it's $79 a month to host it and maintain it. And they go, okay. And it just makes it easy.
A question that's kind of related popped in to my head. So the reason we're able to make our businesses work is because we've figured out how to sell this stuff. Would it be? I haven't seen an example of that with someone from, let's say, Pakistan, figuring out how to sell in Hutchinson, Kansas, or Minneapolis, Minnesota. Like, What's the blocker there?
You're going to make me sound mean, Toby. When someone, like, for instance, I have a couple customers. I've one in the Netherlands, one in the UK. I have one in Spain. Nope, they're not with me anymore. From Italy, they're not with me anymore. And those are like people that knew me from something, right? So they knew me from the power sports industry, or they knew me from maybe the podcast that I'd done with WP Tonic or something like that. But if I didn't have that connection, I wouldn't have those clients. There's no way I would be able to jump into the fray, in Spain and become the number one web provider in Spain.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. So
it just wouldn't happen. And so the expectation that they would come here and find success is pretty slim, unless they get notoriety some other way.
But why couldn't it happen for you in Spain? That's the question I'm asking. Like you or me, like what's stopping us from, or here's another way less extreme example. And I'm talking about this with my SEO guy. Like, he's like, maybe we should open a fake Atlanta office and capture some of the Atlanta local Google juice. We haven't done it yet. I don't know if we will or not, but what's stopping us or you, or, you have Hutchinson, why not Kansas City?
Yeah. Well, there's a girl that jumps on the post status calls from Kansas City. I really don't want to tick her off. She seems like she's full of energy. She'd come after me. But you know what? So take it from another example. You're in your town, right? People know who you are. We see you around. You're getting on a podcast. You're spreading your mojo around, right? There's other WordPress people in your town doing effectively little to nothing, but somehow still have a business tile over their door.
Mm-hmm.
When I go to Grok and I say, who are the best agencies to get a WordPress website made in Hutchinson, Kansas? Mañana No Mas doesn't come up on the list.
Mm-hmm.
It starts naming companies I've never even heard of.
Uh-huh.
And then I start asking it questions like, why didn't you recommend Mañana No Mas? And it says, well, why would I? And then I'm like, oh. And then, but it kept recommending this one company where I know the owner. And so I talked to her and I said, hey, you were the number 2 recommended person on Grok for local website development. And she's like, oh, that's super cool. I said, who are these other people? And she's like, oh, I haven't seen them do anything in years. Right. And so then it's like, you realize, like you mentioned the local SEO juice, right? It's like, how is AI making these decisions and coming up? So AI made me a ton of suggestions on how to become more localized for AI search. I implemented all that stuff, waited 2 weeks, did another search to duplicate it, and I didn't get much better results.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to be in for the long haul.
Yeah. So the sales thing has always been weird to me, and I've realized it's a skill and a talent like anything.
Well, how many of your sales are what you would call happenstance or SEO doing its job versus personal connection, referral, some kind of, touch?
Yeah, I would guess half are SEO related, like cold leads or warm leads from SEO, and half are personal leads. It's a weird thing though, and I think maybe this is the answer to my original question, like why can't you sell in Spain or Kansas City? That sales is like an art form in and of itself, and selling in Kansas City might be way different in a way than selling in Hutchinson and same here,
Well, there's that famous saying, right? It says, if all else is equal, people will do business with people they know, like, and trust. Right? And so we're super involved here in town. We're involved with Startup Hutch, all our entrepreneur activities. We go to all the after-hour parties with the local Chamber of Commerce. Hutchinson, in a very strange way, opened itself up to us when we moved here almost 2 years ago, and just soaked us up. Like, I got in touch with Startup Hutch. I said, I love the city. It's a great place to move. I can't believe all the opportunities that are here. And they put me on a podcast right away. And then the city invited me to speak at City Hall for an entrepreneur class. And then I spoke at the high school and I spoke at the college. And now I do stuff at the church. And it just keeps snowballing. Like, we are integrated into the community so quickly here that it makes it hard to fail.
So how? Let's say you're, 22 years old. You're kind of getting into WordPress and you want to make some money. You want to transition from your job wherever to, making some part-time and maybe full-time cash doing WordPress freelance. And what's the biggest bang for the buck for getting that first sale and the second sale in terms of time, not dollar spend, but like you have no money. How are you going to get your first sale? What would you recommend for, like, you have 10 hours this week, where should they invest in?
I always go back to, and this is going to sound like some weird guru stuff, right? But I just always go back to, what's your niche? What are you interested in? How do you find your people? Like, so what if you're 22 years old, right? Are you into mountain biking? Are you into bicycling? Are you into skateboarding? Are you into, DJ, music? Are you into video games? Figure out what you're into, then get into those groups, whether they're live or virtual. Get into those groups, add value, right? So give away some free information, or, show that you're a knowledgeable person. And then through passion and affiliation, leads begin to erupt, and once you do the first gig, you get that person to give you a testimonial, and then you got 2 or 3 gigs. And then out of those 2 or 3 gigs, you end up with 1 or 2 more testimonials. And then you just leverage it. You just start going, you just start moving. And then you increase the scope of your niche after that. So, like, for me, a lot of my work was based on some fitness stuff. I got real big into, like, Spartan races and century rides on bicycles. I'm really big in power sports and the marine with boats. And so a lot of my work is centered in those areas.
Great. We are just about out of time here. Want to thank everyone for listening. Kurt, thank you. Toby, thank you. I'm thanked.
Well, let's do this, Toby. For the new listeners and viewers, how can they best reach you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. My last name is Cryns. That's probably the best place. You can go to themightymo.com. If you Google The Mighty Mo WordPress, you'll get me. Otherwise, you'll get the famous Battleship. Or in Missouri, I think it might. It's not Kansas City, but it's some place by Hutchins.
I didn't understand.
It's a radio station, The Mighty Mo. But go to themightymo.com WordPress. You'll find me. How about you, Kurt? How can people find you?
Like yourself, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm the only Kurt Von Onen on LinkedIn, so if you find me, you know you got me. And I guess we can also ask the listeners and viewers if they had a really great name for this show. That would be awesome, right? Mm-hmm. For agencies, by agencies. And I guess that's that. And then also show your love to the WP Minute for sponsoring this podcast. Matt and his team do an amazing job. They've been doing it for 15 years or something like that. They keep on trucking. They're like the little engine that will never, ever stop. So, there you go. Thanks, everybody.